Hey, welcome into Rob Wright's Stanix Pop Culture. And today we are talking about Band of Brothers, episode 4, Replacements. And with me, as always, is Heather. Hey, Heather, how are you today?
Doing pretty good. How are you, Rob?
Doing good. Sadly, Agent Pepsi One has had some issues with her computer and may or may not be able to join us. Hopefully, she can maybe join us a little bit later into the show. If not, hopefully, she can join in the chat and talk about some of her experience and history with Market Garden and some other stuff. Major events going on in this episode. Should be a
Hopefully,
lot of fun to discuss.
hopefully she wasn't sabotaged by her enemies.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Being an agent, you got to watch out for these things.
Yeah, and maybe it's agents of the Coca-Cola company. Who knows?
Oh, probably.
Yeah, since she's Pepsi One. But we've got a really good show today. Really interesting episode. It You've got new recruits and replacements coming into the company. We've got a new mission, which is Operation Market Garden, which we're going to talk about, which is very interesting. And then this episode really features a key member of Easy Company, Bull Randleman.
Yes, love Bull Randleman, and we've seen him throughout the episodes in, smaller kind of parts, but great to see an episode get focused on him. Love his
Yeah.
love not his character, the person and how he's portrayed. And the actor. One of my
Yeah.
favorites.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Hey, there's Agent Pepsi One. She's in the chat.
Yay! Hey, it's your
Hey,
Pepsi One.
Agent Pepsi One, you gonna be able to come on and talk about Operation Market Garden in this episode with us, or are you gonna stay in the chat? We'll see if she responds.
Right. There's a
Yeah.
little delay. There's always a weird time delay.
Oh yeah, it's like 2 second. Uh, Want to say hi to Theta Zord. Glad you're here, and glad to see a couple of others. SP4H is here, and then Dogface 2104 is here as well. Glad you're here as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We just love the show. We're not historians by any means, but I've got some of the events that happen in the actual book, which I of course always recommend, and then always recommend that you try and get the show on physical media if you can, so you can watch it whenever you want. So, all right, let's dig in and talk a little about this episode. Heather, do you want to talk about the introduction and read the introduction?
Sure, I will do that. Let me see here. So, Easy Company's stay in England is far too short when they are ordered to participate in Operation Market Garden. This major engagement is to thrust north into Holland, seizing the bridges along the way with a view to giving the Allies a clear road into Germany. The men of Easy Company are told that they will be leaving for good, and they parachute into an area near Eindhoven, where they get a huge welcome from the war weary population. With significant losses in the Normandy invasion, Easy also has to welcome new recruits who, in the eyes of the now veteran combat soldiers who survived, they are as much a liability as a benefit. The battle is not easy, with the Germans putting up fierce resistance. The situation is particularly dire for Sergeant Bull Randleman, who is separated from the rest of the company and is forced to hide out in a local barn overnight as the Germans move in. The battle was not a success and did not shorten the war as had been hoped. Do you want to talk a little bit about Market Garden?
Oh,
That
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, the Market Garden is interesting because the idea was that hey, if we can get into the Netherlands and get in the northern part and cross over the Rhine, we can be in Berlin by Christmas. Was the whole
yeah,
thinking?
and I think too, like so right after Normandy, the Allies came through France fairly quickly and
Mhm.
liberated large portions of it, and then they kind of hit a stalemate, right, where they stabilize near the German border. So the Allies are here. There's like a long front line along the border, and it's kind of gotten stagnant to where both sides are dug in. There's not a lot of movement, and that sort of initiated this idea, like let's go up and around and behind the
Yeah.
German lines, parachute into these three separate towns, and kind of create this road that would take. They could then when they parachuted in, open up this road for the tanks to move in and cross the Rhine and into Germany. And I think some success in where Easy Company was closer to the Allied lines, but the ones that were further in towards Germany were not successful, and they ended up pulling out. So yeah, interesting operation and a bold move that didn't entirely work out.
Yeah. Agent Pepsi One says her Chromebook's not working, but I'll let you see what she said. It was Field Marshal Montgomery's disaster. 3 airborne divisions were dropped. So the Americans were dropped with British armor. So you had British armor that was already coming up that way. And it was the first time that Easy Company had worked with British armor. Of course, we saw in Normandy where they worked with U.S. Sherman tanks and were very successful with that. But as we're going to see in this episode, they didn't have as much experience with the British armor and the British rules of warfare versus what they were used to with American armor and American warfare.
Well, and part of it too was Holland is very soft ground. It's full of
Mhm,
rivers, canals, kind of
mhm,
swampy area because it's lowland that floods all the time. And so, yeah, the tanks had to move along this really narrow road. They couldn't spread out across the land just because of the terrain. And so, yeah, it was a foolish plan because they're not able they're trying to take these bridges so the tanks can move
mhm.
in, but then the tanks are all along this narrow road, and it was really easy then for the Germans to come in and just bombard them because they couldn't get out of the way. They couldn't move off this narrow road, which turned into being a disaster. And yeah, easy. And the paratroopers are trying to hold this road, and just didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, I've read some different things about Eisenhower giving the okay for this, and one of the things that he said was that, "Hey, when you've got the enemy on the run outside of France, we got to keep pushing." And the idea was
Mhm.
to keep pushing your enemy. And in all fairness, I mean, what it did was it forced the Germans to regroup, and then they had to resupply with their replacements. Unfortunately, they were so close to Germany that it was easier for them to
Right.
resupply and get replacements in to kind of hold their line and push back.
And they
Than it was.
moved some of their troops off of the Eastern Front with
Mhm.
Russia, which,
Yes.
the Russians were not as technically advanced, and they were not very well supplied, and so it was easier for them to pull from there, come in, pull from other
Mhm.
areas.
Yep. Um, let's see. Agent Pepsi One says also armor is very thirsty. Typical fuel consumption is about 150 gallons per 100 miles per tank. Yeah. Yep. And then, one of the things that it said in the book was that it took like ungodly amount of hours to get through town because of the celebrations of the people. And that didn't help the fuel for those
Yes.
tanks going through the towns either because they were stopping and kind of stalled for a while they were trying to get through the
Yeah.
herd of people.
And
So,
part of the strategy was, right, they had to take these bridges quickly before the Germans
mhm,
found out what they were doing, and so, yeah,
mhm.
the slowdown just really made it even harder because it was something that relied on speed to take it before they could come in and secure the position.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect of it is that they also didn't want the Germans to find out because the Germans could just blow up the bridge.
Right, which they
Um,
did, right? They
yeah.
blew up 2 around
Mhm.
Eindhoven, before they were taken, and, then the army had to come and build, like, the temporary bridges to get the tanks across, which was another slowdown.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just it's crazy with all the stuff. Um, So you got this interesting operation, but you also have these replacements, and we could talk a little bit about some of them. Um, so you had replacements that came in, and what really happened is they were off the line for quite a few weeks in back in Britain. It seems like a quick turnaround in the show, but it was really a little bit longer than that. And we talked a little bit about this last time, but you had guys that were taking leave and going to get tattoos in Scotland, partying in London. Meanwhile, Winters was training some of these new recruits that were coming in because he had to really get them assimilated into each unit and get them going so that when they went back out, they'd be prepared. It was interesting at the beginning of this episode, just to hear the men talk about the replacements. Do you want to talk a little bit about what they had to say?
Yeah, so, I think the veterans, and I thought this was one of the things that I thought was funny too. Looking at it was they they came in, they jumped what, early September, and they were in, how long in Normandy? I don't know, 3 weeks, and now they're back
Mhm.
in Britain, and so these are like the grizzled veterans, right? Just because I think it was so extreme, the situation that they were put in, but, I mean, really, they haven't been there that long, right? They've
Mhm.
only been there now, like, 3 months. So I thought that that was a little bit funny. I mean, veterans in the fact that they've had this just incomparable experience. But yeah, I think they were worried too. They didn't want to get too attached to the replacements because they were so green that they were worried about them getting killed. And I don't know, maybe they saw a little bit of themselves in these guys because they had experienced this just a few months earlier, right? Not having any idea what they were getting thrown into.
Yeah. What they said is that they got to the point where they didn't want to be friendly with them because the replacements would easily die because the replacements were so gun ho.
Yeah.
Sounds like, and it even said in the book that the replacements were eager to try and prove themselves to
Mhm.
the rest of the unit. It's interesting. Um, with these new guys coming in, they even said, one of the newer guys said, "Yeah, we looked up to these guys. We wanted to be, the best that we could be for them." I think it's
Yeah.
interesting. Um, let's see, Dogface 2104. Let's see. He said, talking with Bill, they wore captured belts and pistols around the base to scare the crap out of replacements.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's pretty funny. And then Agent Pepsi One says 3 months of constant combat. That's the
Yeah,
real issue. So much PTSD. Oh yeah.
right.
Well, I mean, even more so later on as we get into this, the rest of the series. I mean, um, basically, my understanding is it's not just individual PTSD, but like entire company
Yeah.
PTSD. I
Oh, yeah,
mean,
it would have to be. And
yeah.
like I said, like, the experience, I think the time that they were there was not super long, but it just the intensity of that experience, I mean, that was horrible, parachuting in under fire, the mist drop, I mean, it just had this one thing after another, and it just, yeah, some of those battles taking Carrington, I mean, they're just so extreme what they were thrown into that they had to
Oh
be
yeah.
just it's like instantly into the fire.
Yeah, it's just crazy all the stuff they had to deal with. All right, let's go over some key characters before we bring up the slides. Um, who stands out to you that you want to talk about first?
Well, Bill Randleman, obviously, he's a just great person, great character in this, and just one of those guys with a big personality that stands out. And also, they focus on a lot of the new replacements are under him.
Hmm.
And I think there's another guy, Private James Miller, who just looks super young, and he's kind of the face of the replacements and who ends up dying at the end. And I think they kind of use him as just the face of this, someone who comes in super green, ready to prove himself, and then ends up, unfortunately getting killed. Also Roy Cobb, who's kind of a jerk, right? Because I think it was a lesson for him, kind of giving some of the replacements a little bit of a hard time. And then I love it when I think it's Randleman said, hey, you didn't fight in Normandy either. When he's giving the replacements a hard time for wearing the medal, that's a unit citation for jumping
Yep.
into Normandy. And yeah, he says, "Well, hey, Cobb, you didn't fight in Normandy either." And he's like, "Well, kinda like backpedaling then." But,
Hmm.
yeah, you see him later too, a little bit scared and frozen up in battle
Hmm.
too. So, I think, yeah, maybe lesson learned there for him. I think he's a good portrayal there. And also, Buck Compton, who gets shot, unfortunately, in this one. And Lewis Nixon, we see a little bit more again. He's never featured a lot because he's not in combat, but we see him a little more in this and getting a close call are kind of the ones who stood out to me.
Yeah, I was going to mention a little bit about Cobb and 2104 Dogface mentioned it. So Cobb actually was a little bit older than most of these guys in Easy Company at this time. He was actually experienced. He had some experience with the Second Armored in North Africa. So he had a lot of combat experience. I'm not sure how much of it said in the book that he got combat fatigue later on, so that's real. But I'm not with regards to him picking on anybody or kind of his portrayal is kind of this guy that's a bully, but he's not really as strong as he make himself out to. I'm not sure if that's real to
Yeah,
a man.
I
I
think
think
they're
that's probably
using
what
it
it.
more as like a story device, right? To
Yeah.
show like here's what the kind of what the younger guys went through, the newer guys went through, maybe not necessarily
Mhm.
younger, but that they just were coming and new and what they had to deal with. And so they kind of use those characters, those two, to show that piece. So yeah, interesting. SP4H says, yeah, that's a rite of passage for them to get messed with.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
2104 Dogface. He called you out at an event. Are you talking about Cobb? I think.
No, he may be talking about.
Per the men in Easy Company, he was a great guy, but an ass when he was drinking. So
Oh, okay.
maybe.
That happens later on too.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
interesting stuff. Um, Now Bill Garnier uh, called him out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agent Pepsi One also mentioned something about the Germans attacked the Ludendorff Bridge with some very futuristic weapons, V1 cruise missiles, Fritz X TV guided bombs, and Arado 234 jet bombers. Cool. I don't know enough about my World War II weaponry to really give any
Yeah.
more insight into that, but that's really interesting.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring on the some of the slides here, and here are some of the guys. Of course, it opens up with the guys playing darts, and they say within the downtime they would gamble and do certain things like this. So it doesn't surprise me that they showed darts on a dartboard. I thought this was a fun scene with Luz and Buck Compton and Babe Heffron. Babe's another one that gets a little bit of screen time here.
Hmm.
Um, with the darts here. Did you ever see the interview with Babe Heffron about how Garnier treated him and his unit at all? Real quick.
No, I don't think I watched that. I think I
Yeah.
missed that.
So
Did you let me
particularly before they did jump into Holland. So Babe apparently was a heavy machine gunner, and so he had a machine gun and he got the bandoliers. The Garnier gave him the bandoliers, and any extra equipment that he needed so that he would drop when we jump. And he had some guy came up to Bill and goes, "Hey, what do I do with these grenades? Give them to Heffron." He gives him the Heffron. Hey, what do I do with this other bandolier? Oh, give it to Heffron. Hey, what do I do with this?
Eh,
Give it to Heffron. And
Yeah.
so Heffron's like loaded with all these weapons and everything else, along with this big machine gun. And and apparently he says, "Hey, Bill, what's going on? What?" He's like, "I just want to keep you safe, kid."
Yeah, I did watch that actually. I remember now. That was pretty funny.
Yeah. So I just think that was funny. I mean, it's just like, but it's just it's hilarious that he got all that. He kind of looked after him because they were both from Philly, but yeah, he made him a pack mule is what 2104 Dogface says. But yeah, it's just kind of funny to hear about that. I when you see some of the interviews with these guys, it's so funny to see their camaraderie and how close they really were. I find it refreshing and so awesome to watch those
Yeah.
videos.
That's why I
Uh,
like these scenes too, where they're, in the bar having fun, more casual. It's not 100%
yeah,
in combat because you get to see some of this more bonding going on.
yeah, and Garnier's testing them out as well, and there's Cobb.
Right.
And Miller's played by a famous actor now. So a lot of these actors got their chops in Band of Brothers. James McAvoy.
Yeah. So funny to see how young, they're all so young in this.
Yeah, so there you go. There's
Mhm.
Private Miller played by James McAvoy. So interesting. Agent Pepsi One has some more information about weapons here. She says World War II isn't the focus of her masters, but the persecutor of the Cold War. Those weapons the Fritz X and the V1 especially were further developed in the United States, which is kind of cool. And then she says, after the war, some of the late 1940s weapons were developments of these. Also, the B-45 bomber was an upscale version of the Arado 234. It failed against the B-47. Interesting. And welcome, Nemesis of Eden. Glad you're here. Thank you for stopping by. Let's see. See what she has to say. You get to know the boys better in the scenes like this. Love how we have Bull stand up for the new recruits. Yeah, I do too. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, "Don't mess with my guys," because right there, they're the ones under his command.
Yeah, yeah, and I especially love the part where he goes to Cobb and he's like, "Damn, Cobb, you didn't jump in Normandy either," because Cobb
Yeah,
got hit in the plane and ended up
yeah,
not jumping.
yep.
Um, 2104 Dogface says this: interviews are good, but damn, when you're drinking with them, there's no one bugging them with the cues and roasting the insults. He just says it's just
Right.
it just was a good time. So golly,
Uh,
I can't imagine all the stories that he got out of them with that.
yeah, that would be so awesome.
Yeah. All right. So I tried to keep the slides in order as best I could, but man, it was really difficult with this episode because they're all over the place on some of them. But here we go, the Operation Market Garden map, and Nixon and Winters kind of present it to them. Nixon has a little bit more screen time in this episode. Winters he's still there, but he's not shown as much.
Yeah, I like how they feature Nix a little bit in this one. You
Yeah.
get to see him a little bit more, and I love it when he tells them, they'll be under British command, and you see all the guys like, "Oh,"
Yeah.
like, they don't think that's really a good thing. I don't know if their experience, like, with them being in Britain, but they're just kinda like, "Ugh."
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, so we get the Jeep scene with where Popeye is another character that we see in here at the beginning. Remember, he got shot in the rear end,
Mhm.
which turns out to be a running theme here. A lot of buttocks bursting in Easy Company.
Well, when you're running, right, you're running, away, you're getting,
Yeah.
it's the likely place to get shot, right?
Yep. So he went AWOL from the hospital and hitched the ride with Sobel. Now, he didn't actually hitch a ride with Sobel. He actually, in the book, it says that he hitched a ride at another a place, but there was an actual private that hitched a ride with Sobel. Let me see if I can find his name really quick. But it was a different private that hitched a ride with Sobel, and basically, Sobel goes, you'll be AWOL for this, and there, I found it. It's Captain Sobel was talking to Stroll, Private Stroll, Strohl. I hope I pronounced that correct. Private Stroll, and Sobel warned him, you're going AWOL. Stroll responded with, he didn't think he would get in trouble by choosing to go into combat with his company, so Sobel told him to hop in. It was a stupid thing to do, but Stroll said 4 decades later, I was as weak as a pussycat, but he wasn't going to let his buddies go into action without him. He got himself equipped and climbed into C-47. It said Popeye Wynn, who had been shot in the butt, helping destroy the battery at Burkhart Manor on June 6th, had been operated on and was recuperating in the hospital in Wales, was told that he was absent from his company for more than 90 days. He was when he was listed fit for combat, he would be assigned to a different unit. Wynn wanted none of that, and he persuaded a sergeant who was in charge of releasing the patients to send him back to Aldburn with light duty papers. He arrived on September 1st and threw away the papers and rejoined his unit. So,
Yeah, I can see not wanting to be reassigned. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
yeah,
especially if you've been with
just
these guys. I mean, oh man,
yeah, tough it out and, you don't wanna get into a different unit.
yep, absolutely. And there's Popeye right there. Um, and it doesn't say anything about Sobel and the motorcycle in the book, but it's kind of funny how he kind of confronts Malarkey here.
Yeah, it's funny, but I thought, hey, at least he salutes him, right? And, because
Yeah.
he's now a sergeant and,
Hmm.
um, which he didn't do for winners, so you never know with Sobel. But yeah, I think probably just what created for the show to kind of give him another little moment there of interaction.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with the comment earlier in the first episode about Malarkey's last name.
Hmm.
Uh, we won't get into that,
Yeah.
but
So he
yeah,
shows him a little respect there, I guess.
yeah, and there's Popeye and Lipton, and then basically they're kind of shocked to see Sobel there, which I think.
Yeah, yeah. But I think this is good, right? Because you see them now, the guys who've already jumped once already know, like, hey, here's what you need to do. Get rid of all the extra stuff, right? Be ready to fight. And they actually showing the new guys, right? So they're not, uh, they're more prepared than what they were before.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Nemesis of Eden makes a good point here. Being reassigned just makes you a replacement in the eyes of whatever unit you get stuck with. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We see that later on in another episode coming up, another 4 episodes. So, yeah, good point there, Nemesis of Eden. Thank you.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So they're getting ready to jump in Holland. I love how Bull's kind of taking care of his men. I didn't really have any screenshots of this. This is as close as I got to the replacements, but he's like, "Hey, pack it like this way, that way. We're jumping
Yep.
light. It'll be easier jump than Normandy. It's during the day." And to be honest, they did have some flak. They did have a little bit of anti-aircraft, but not as bad, not near as bad as Normandy. So the planes flew straighter. They stayed in formation. There was no, we talked about with D-Day where they were all over the place trying to avoid flak and got out of formation. They were tight, and the jump was. The Easy Company says that this was the best jump, the softest landing, the easiest jump they had the whole war.
So I did in looking up Market Garden, it did say that, they put the drop zone away from where they're intending to go just for that reason, right? So they wouldn't get all the anti-aircraft, but
Mhm.
then on the downside, they had to, hike for miles to where they were going. And so it's a little bit of a catch 22 there, right? That it took them longer to get to their objective because they're trying to avoid that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was interesting. So, um, and then Agent Pepsi One talked about her experience being in Afghanistan. She wanted to be reassigned to another company. And then let's see.
Oh, the first surface to air missiles? That's interesting.
Oh wow. I didn't know that. Interesting. And then Nemesis of Eden says, Bull's like, don't jump with your rifle like that. It's gonna hit the ground and break your jaw on landing. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, very good. Yeah, like that. Let's see. 2104 Dogface mentions the 82nd did that pre D Day by sending some of their veteran troopers from Sicily jump the 504th to help with the new units to do their loadouts before they jumped on D Day. Really? I didn't know that.
Hmm.
Interesting. Cool. All right. So they jump and they go into this town, and it's interesting. I mean, my goodness, everybody greeting them so friendly and warm. They were happy that the Germans had kind of moved out and were hoping that the Americans were going to continue to occupy the city. But man, wow.
Well,
Um,
they've been under German occupation now for what, 4 years plus?
yeah, 4
I mean,
years. Yeah,
maybe
4 years.
going on 5, and so I'm sure by that point, right, because the Germans occupying in the areas that they occupied, they're taking all the resources for their
Mhm.
own army and their own people, and so a lot of these, areas that were occupied, they're near starvation, like, constantly, right, because the Germans are taking everything that's produced there for their own people, their own army. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm sure they're pretty happy, that they're gonna be liberated, and, yeah,
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
shame that they ended how it ended up, But this was another thing too that's just so bizarre too, is thinking of that picture's great with he's just making out with that woman, like,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
that's more than a little kiss.
hey, you know
And
what? I wonder. I'm visiting it there this summer. I wonder if I'm going to get a little action like some of those guys did. I mean, who
get out
knows?
that uniform, get out a uniform, and, I think that's the key.
Yeah.
That'll be the key to getting some action.
Well, the actual the great thing about this picture, that's the real Babe Heffron
Yes.
there.
Yeah. That's so cool that he got in there. I like that.
Yeah, apparently Bill Garnier called him Mr. Hollywood after that, or teased him about his one scene in here. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, it
that's
was
funny.
interesting.
These,
Um,
I just can't imagine, like, right, the civilians are right in the middle of a war zone, like,
mhm,
living in a war zone. Like, you look at, like, prior to World War One, where you had armies, like, go out to a battlefield. I mean, you're looking
mhm.
at swords and horses, and it's more a little more removed. I mean, yeah, like, towns were sometimes under siege or armies would come through, but just the advanced weaponry and the fact that, like, the entire continent is a battlefield, it just is horrible because you never know, right, where the armies are gonna move, where you're gonna be at risk, and, all these civilians are just kinda stuck there. That's what always would just be horrible.
Yeah, and Dogface, or 2104 Dogface, God, I missed the time the ribbing Bill gave Babe after that scene. That's hilarious. I can only imagine what.
Oh, I bet, yeah, I bet he got all kinds of teasing for that. So
Okay,
funny.
so they get in there and it's interesting. They're given food, beer, all kinds of stuff. But the other thing about it is it slowed them down. I mean, they had to go out of this town and through it, and it took them hours to get through because of the parade.
Mhm.
I thought this was funny that the lady even kissed
Ritters.
Twitters. um, but one thing it didn't
Uh,
talk about in the books that I thought was eye opening, which I'd heard before, but I don't know. It was a different source than this. But gosh, what they did to the women who mainly were the ones that were promiscuous with the Germans for the last 4 years. What they did to them, oh my gosh, shaved their heads.
right. Yeah, and I'm sure, they were collaborating too.
Yeah.
Probably more than just sex. I'm sure they were collaborating with them and,
Hmm.
telling on their neighbors and giving information, and because there was an active resistance in these
Hmm.
areas. And
Oh yeah.
so you had to know who to trust. I think what I always thought was interesting was the actress Audrey Hepburn was part of the Dutch resistance during World War II, and she
Oh
was
yeah,
a
yeah.
teenager, and she used to put on performances to raise money to give to the resistance, and she would also, pass secrets, like carry secrets back to different people because she looked young and innocent, and they didn't think anyone would suspect her. But if you're with these women and you would trust them, right? They're probably telling them, the Germans, "Hey, this person is part of the resistance," or, "This person could be Jewish." They're giving away people's secrets, which I think, is part of the reason too that they got that treatment. And I don't know, I just always wonder too, like the psychology of that, like, what's making you part of the resistance versus being a collaborator, right? That the Germans are there almost 5 years. They, they probably thought, "Hey, this is like looking like a permanent situation," right? They didn't know the Americans are gonna enter the war and, thinking their own self-interest, maybe it's better to join the other side. But yeah, Nemesis of Eden, the men were just shot, right? But
Mhm.
I maybe that's easier. I mean, the woman with the baby, or that with the baby who's thrown out on the street, like, what is she gonna do, right? I mean, you and your baby might end up starving to death or freezing to death, so maybe getting shot might it might be a little bit easier. I don't know.
Yeah. Tiara Starbrighter. Welcome, Tiara Starbrighter. I'm glad you're here. She says that just as there were French women who dated Germans that were luring young Germans to the woods, supposedly for liaisons, but really to unalive them.
Oh, wow. Nice.
It's way more rich. Don't trust anybody.
Oh, yeah. Good advice. Always good advice.
Yeah. 2104 Dogface said they had a great resistance setup. Sadly, the British didn't fully trust them during the planning stages. Yeah, that I'd heard and watched something. Babe had talked about how he had set up a machine gun nest in one of the towns that they had occupied, and they had a German platoon that was coming down that he was ready to go attack. And basically, the Dutch resistance wanted to take him out, and they asked him if they could, and they let him. And apparently that's what happened with that. Let's see.
There's one of these scenes where the woman, like, grabs Picante and kisses him, and his face
Yeah.
afterwards looks hilarious.
Yes.
He's just
Oh
like, "Oh
yeah.
my god." He's, like, dazed.
Yeah. It's funny.
Okay.
It's interesting. I just, you know, it's different back then. Most people had wives and mistresses. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and everything was kind of hidden, and everything wasn't as in the open as things are today in a way with social media and stuff. But
Mhm. Yeah, you could get away with sneaking around a lot easier back then.
yeah, doesn't make any more right though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh Anyway, so they're getting on the tanks and they're going through to the town, and this is where they see the one lady with their head shaved, and they give her
Yeah.
one of the packages. Yeah, 2104 Dogface says that that's had a lot of great things to say about the Dutch. And then the lieutenant comes out there, and I read in the book that basically he was a sitting duck because he's like 6'1", 6'2", taller than a lot of people, easy target, and he's going out in front of the unit, and he's just sitting out in the open and gets shot.
Right, just standing there.
Yeah,
Yeah, talking. I mean, even
yeah,
when you think I mean, you'd think after, like, a very short time, you would always be trying to find cover or being by the tank or, you wouldn't just stand out in the road like that. Even when you think no one's around, right? It just I don't know.
yeah. And so they get attacked, and the guys get in the ditches, and Randleman's getting a medic. The medic gets shot. The guys are in the ditches, don't know exactly what to do, and Randleman's like, "There's Webster," and this is one of the first
Yeah.
episodes that really shows a lot of him.
Mhm.
Um, basically he's like, you need to get moving because you can't, you're sitting targets right here. Got to keep
Right.
moving. And so they're trying to take the town. Hubler's also taking point. They're trying to take out some of the snipers here. This is the one of the main areas where a sniper was up here, and they go into the town a little bit and they discover the tanks. And let's talk a little bit about the tank battles here because you got some British tanks that are with Easy Company, but the men go in there and they discover the German Tiger tanks, and oh my goodness, um,
Yeah. Well, this is funny, and I thought, so British, right? Because the
yeah,
British guy on the tank says, "Oh, we've been told, no unnecessary destruction of property," which that just seemed like so British to me. And they're trying to point out, like, get that, he's right there. And yeah, but they're already dug into this town. I think that this was, they were five bridges that they were trying to secure right
mhm,
around Eindhoven,
yeah,
and they do end up securing some, and this actually takes place over a period of 8 days. So once they secure the bridges and the tanks start coming through, that's when the Germans are coming, right, to attack the
mhm,
tanks. And
mhm.
so they move in after they've secured the bridges. Two of the bridges, the Germans actually destroy and they have to be rebuilt. But I think part of you don't entirely see in this episode the long passage of time that this actually took when they're getting all these German reinforcements are coming in.
Yeah, and Sergeant Martin in the book, it says that he really did warn the tank commander. And he's like, "Hey, shoot over here," and then he's right around the corner, and the tank commander jumps up, moves his tank forward, and he's like, "I can't shoot him if I can't see him," like you were saying. And as soon as he gets in the line of sight, the
Yeah, there
German
you
tank.
see it, like, targeting you. It's like,
Yeah,
I don't know, I would've fired anyway. If someone's telling me, "Hey, he's there," I would've done it. I mean, I don't, I'm not gonna worry about the technicality. It just seemed like a very British sentiment to
Yeah, I mean, you're just like sitting here going, "What are you doing?" So,
me.
um, and you've got different things that are going on here. You see the men, they moved up and now they're retreating because the tanks are coming in. We see Cobb freeze up in these scenes, and it's kind of showing the other half of it. Whether it says that he did freeze up on here, but yeah, it just shows his character in there. Um,
Well, I
and
think too, part of it is, yeah, the replacements are green, but some of these guys, even the guys who've been through Normandy, um, this is just now another new scenario, right? And it's not like you
Mhm,
can just be like, "Oh, this is old hat to me." It's still going to be horrible trying to do this, right? I mean, you're now being fired
mhm.
on by all these tanks. They had said there were, old boys or old men and boys, but it's pretty looks like pretty seasoned German troops here that are reinforcing this. So
Yeah, apparently it's the elite paratroopers of the Germans. Not quite as green as the ones in France, but these are like the best of the best that they've got that they're fighting up against as well. But also, you have all they're just pinned down. I mean, T.R. Starbrighter brings up British war philosophy: stay calm and don't destroy classic buildings. American war doctrine: bring it down, boys.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so one of the tanks gets fired upon, and it's moving at a pace, and Bull randomly had jumped into a ditch, and he's trying to avoid this tank, and he ends up behind German lines. It's crazy what happens to.
Yeah, that was terrifying when he's crawling and like the tank is like on fire and looks like it's gonna crash into the ditch. And yeah, I think it's just the back and forth too, right? It's kind of chaotic
Yeah.
and he ends up just trying to hide and get cover and then he ends up behind their lines.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you see him in the retreat, and actually, at this point, they retreat, and we see a couple things. So first off, Nix is on the retreat. Nixon gets shot in the helmet, and it comes off, and we see Winters coming to his aid. I thought that was later on, but it's earlier. It's before we see all the stuff with Bull behind the lines,
Yeah.
and apparently that really did happen. It went in the front and out the side of his helmet, and only gave him a little bit of a burn. But that was it. It
Was
didn't do anything.
was
So
that a bullet that grazed it or is it shrapnel that comes
it's
and hits?
bullet.
It's a
It's a
bullet.
bullet.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
he
it
has.
must have come across this way,
Yeah, they
right?
had shrapnel from a blown up bridge before, but this was actually a bullet that
Okay.
said there. The other thing that happened, which I don't think I have slides for, was so we mentioned Buck Compton getting shot in the tushy. So he gets shot in the tush, and Garnier and Malarkey and somebody else, I can't remember who else, Toy, I think Toy, they tear down the door of a barn in order to pull him out because he's like, leave me for the Germans, and he says in this that I outweigh you guys by like, I outweigh two of you, which he's a big, strong athlete
Right.
too. I mean, but no, they pull him out. And in the book, um, you know, they lift it, they get him out and they lift on the tank, and Lipton gives him crap and says, wow, one bullet, four holes. And he basically says in the book, if I wasn't shot in the ass, I'd kick your ass. Is what he
Right.
says, Lipton, which I just think is
Yeah.
funny. But
No, that's great. I loved how they drug him out on that they kicked the door down and drag him out. Use it to drag him
yeah,
out.
yeah, I thought that was
Good.
awesome. But yeah,
Not gonna leave him behind.
yeah. So here's some more of them bugging out, and then we see Bull getting into the barn. So it really this is Hollywoodized a little bit because really the book, it's maybe a paragraph and a half of Bull's story here.
Yeah,
So we
okay.
see him with the Dutch girl. She kind of finds him, and then she and I guess her husband kind of knows him in the barn, and they help him get a bullet out. I thought that was interesting.
Was it a
You know,
bullet or was it a piece of shrapnel from the tank or something? It looked
one of
like
the
a big
two.
chunk of something, but there's so much. I mean, when the tanks are hitting the buildings, there's stuff just flying everywhere. I mean, it seems like you
Yeah,
see as much at risk of getting hit by one of those things as a bullet,
Yeah.
or even worse.
Yeah. And then, so I mean, it's yeah, it could have been shrapnel. I don't know, but I like the part where he offers him alcohol and he's like, no,
But pour it
um,
on the
yeah, pour it on the thing, and then he's having trouble getting it out, and Bull just grabs his knife and gives it to him. He's like, use this,
yeah, just get it out.
which is interesting. Let's see, 2104 Dogface Winter said he really thought he was a done when that happened. Yeah, he thought that Nix had bought the farm.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so you've got that, and then the cool thing I think is the replacements are the ones that want to go get him, want to
Yes.
go find him.
Yeah,
And
because he's their commander, right?
yeah,
Their sergeant.
yep, yeah, and so they're
Yeah,
gathering.
Garnier's like, "Oh, all right, I guess."
Yeah, Guardian's like, damn, these boys want to go. Okay, let's go. And then
Okay.
yeah, the other person that said that gosh, Cobb didn't want to go. He's like, I ain't going back up there, but he ends up going with the rest of the group. Heffron goes. No, not Babe. Sorry. Who is it? Hubler. Hubler's one of the ones that wants to lead through that. And then it's interesting how they wanted to go find Bull. And then Bull basically there's Hubler right there with the guys. But yeah, he gets in a bayonet fight with the German, which I read that this happened. 2104 Dogface says Bull was also in a bayonet fight on D-Day in Holland, but the writers wanted to use the one in Holland. But that bayonet fight was interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
and I thought it was interesting also how he's very careful not to attack until he hears the noises to kind of distract him.
Mhm.
So I thought that
Right.
was kind of cool. And then he had to kill him with the bayonet and then kind of hide the body and hide the blood. And he just like to the civilians, get out of here, go away.
Or I
So
was wondering, is he waiting because he doesn't want some like, if there are Germans outside the barn, he doesn't want them to
Mhm.
hear, and so he's
I think
waiting
so.
for the aircraft to come overhead, and it kinda
Yeah.
covers up the sound of the fight.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. So he couldn't they couldn't hear the
Right.
sound of it or him if he calls for help or something.
Yep.
So yeah, let's see. Taylor Starbrighter. I watched these with my father. He studied World War II intensely. It's one of his big hobbies. That's cool. That's awesome. That's one great thing about this show.
Hang on one second. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, the men wanting to go after their sergeant is very noble. Webster, I think, was also involved in that. Webster's like, yeah, all right, let's go. And a lot of what Ambrose got not only was from the men and interviewing the men, but Webster in his own book describing some of these events. I can't believe how detailed Webster's book probably was or probably is. As we talked about Webster before, he's the one that went off the coast exploring and wanting to write a book on sharks and ended up probably meeting Bruce, the Jaws, but who knows? Anyway, want to say welcome to Sigvaldison. Glad you're here. Glad you're with us tonight. DR Star Brighter is calling Agent Pepsi One a gun nerd, which is okay. 2104 Dogface Webster's book is a very good read. Yes, I'll have to get that one. I just want to know, does 2104 Dogface, does it kind of detail all of their stuff in Normandy, or does it give more insights? What does it say? Does it say anything interesting about this particular episode in Holland at all? So if you've got any more on Webster's book, that's cool. But yeah, here we see him he's confronting the guy and then confronting the German. I thought that was interesting. And then here's the guys wanting to go get him. One thing we did leave out was there was an incident where They were trying to sleep and they were sleeping in the hay. And one of the guys goes, "No, we can go into this guy's barn." And they meet the guy and he gives them like jelly and all kinds of things. And they give him cigarettes and chocolate. And he gives chocolate to this Dutch kid. And then there's
Yeah,
and
I
it had
like that. That little boy is adorable, and I'm not even a kid person, but he was
yeah.
so cute. Yeah, that's great. I'm sure, I mean, they've been occupied for so many years. The people have gotta be like, anything that you can give us, I'm sure they were more than happy to have. Yeah, there's Bull
Yeah.
back from his,
Yeah. So he
incident.
comes back and he's able to get back. Basically, what my understanding was is they took that town the next day, and that's where Bull found him. It wasn't like this, like it's depicted, where they're retreating out of Holland. So my understanding, based upon the book and what they said, was they were in the town, and what happened was they got surrounded by the German army, and the
Yeah.
German army set a patrol to try and come in. And Winters was Johnny on the spot because he and Nixon climbed up on the top of one of the church bells, and they were able to see everything around them. And they saw this German patrol coming at them, and so he quickly ordered men to go attack them and take out that patrol. And what it did was it helped Easy to repel a German attack because when the patrol was killed and harmed, the Germans thought that there were more men and troops and weapons in that town than they had thought. And so they
Ah,
didn't have
interesting.
a full fledged attack on that town afterwards because of that, is what it said in the Ambrose book, even though it
Oh,
was,
interesting.
you know, a smaller number of men. So, yeah, it's really interesting how they were pinned down and how they kind of got out of there. But
Well,
really,
they're so, like, um just surrounded, right? Because 'cause you're behind enemy lines, but then they're moving forward, and I think this was part of what the show, because 'cause you're in such a condensed time frame, right? They're making 1 episode out of it, but you look at they parachute in near Eindhoven, the 82nd parachutes in another town, like, further to the north and the
mhm,
east, and Easy's going to link up with that town so that the
mhm,
tanks can get through, and they actually did briefly secure all the
mhm,
bridges and link up to where the tanks could go through. But then the Germans come in, close the road off, and push them back. Then they actually come back, get the road open again. Then they get pushed back again. So it's hard to tell, like when all these events are happening. How, like when
mhm.
did he get behind the lines? I'm sure it would have been pretty easy, right? Because you're surrounded on all sides anyway, and you're trying to advance up to the next town and getting pushed back. So it's pretty interesting when you read the actual events and then how they decided to portray this happening because they've got their one little area secured. But it looks like eventually the Allied line moves closer to Eindhoven when they're able to retreat out. When they figure out that the furthest most northeastern town, the British troops that are there finally surrender because they're not able to take that. So, yeah, interesting how that all actually played out and how it's shown here.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think this is one of the better episodes. I thought. I think it's one of the shorter ones too. But I think this is a good episode because I think it's the storyline moves at a good pace.
Mhm.
I think the last couple episodes you're kind of with D Day, you're kind of whisked around a little bit more, and this one's more straightforward. Overall, what would you think of this episode?
I really like this episode. I think it's really well done. Like I said, I don't know how it'd be. I mean, obviously, it's not a movie. You're not going to portray 8 days worth of time that they're there, but I think it gives you the idea of we're going to jump in, how the jump went, how the people reacted was great. The strategy, good showing that.
Mhm,
Great showing how they've got these new replacements in and how they kind of get integrated into the group, and I mean, they're almost the ones who survive are, like, instantly veterans after this long battle.
mhm.
Because now, I mean, that was heavy casualties, they're gonna get even more replacements, after this, but overall, I think the episode was really well done, it showed basically what happened and gives you a good character development and how that all affected the whole group, so, yeah, I like this episode a lot.
Yeah. And hey, Casey's Creepy Creations. Glad you're here.
Hey,
Thank you.
Casey.
Glad you're here. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really well shot too.
Yes.
You have just some really great cinematography, and this is, folks, this is like 2001, right when CGI is still at its infant stages. And the way
Yeah.
that they are able to shoot this and really make it look realistic. They had the battle scenes where it's not really, you see some of the movies with some of these battle scenes that are almost sped up too much to where you've got just your eyes are just flickering because they're going all over the place.
Too
It's not
much.
like that in these episodes. They're
Right.
very smooth. And I thought they did a fantastic job of showing that.
Yeah.
I love the fact that it's very character driven also. You see the scenes with Bull, but then you see, with Buck Compton and the guys getting him out of there. You see the replacements and what happens with them. You see them having to deal with death, and you see, one of the characters dies, and he's a replacement, and kind of, as we said, the poster boy for it. And you're kind of saddened by that because you have an understanding of what it took to do that. And to be honest, he was just trying to do his job and be brave. And it's sad that he had passed away. But I think this is one of the key episodes that's going to really help us going forward, better understanding this group. Of course, I was talking about James Miller,
Yeah. James
who played
Miller. That's so
by.
sad. And of course, they're focusing on him in the beginning just to tear
Mhm,
your heart out, right? I mean, you show
mhm,
him in the bar scene just to, so you see him die at the end. And like I said, I think they used him as kind of the story of a lot of the replacements who were killed in their first battle. They come in and he's killed right away in that. I do love too how it's character driven and you don't see just the whole group. You
mhm.
every episode you focus on different people, and so even though we've seen Bull already in a couple of episodes, we really get to see him better in this one. We get to see him more, his leadership style, because he is the sergeant of a lot of these new recruits that we're focusing on in this episode. Yeah, I just love how they switch it, and you kind of are seeing it through their eyes, how each of these different battles take place. And yeah, absolutely. The battle scenes are great. I mean, the weaponry that they get, like the airplanes, the tanks, the guns, they took so much care in getting things that were authentic. Either getting the old things or making replicas that actually look like it. Just a great job with that and filming the battle scenes, of course. Also very good. And the CGI. I mean, I love the CGI of the parachutes coming down
Oh yeah,
in the beginning. They did a great job of that, just making the parachutes move and the different movements of the people. And yeah, for 20 years ago, CGI, it's better than a lot of stuff I see today.
yeah. And the other thing about it is with this show, it focuses on a big company, and there are a lot of characters, but they bring it into certain scenes so that you get to kind of know the personalities of each of the men. And I think that's so great. Especially at the beginning. We talked about the bar scene where they just kind of introduce all the men and all the replacements, and then we get to see some of the men that we're familiar with in their kind of leisure, throwing darts and stuff like that. I mean, it was still funny with Buck Upton throwing it left-handed. It's like,
All right.
oh, so now you're gonna wager? Okay, well I'll shoot with my right.
Right. Yeah. It's like the setup, right? For the bad,
Yeah,
like a bad pool player. He's
yeah,
going left and
yeah,
suckering him in for some money.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
good
kind of
good
funny.
stuff.
So. All right. Anything else that you have about this episode? Anybody from the chat have anything else that they want to say about this episode? So, all right.
Yeah,
Well,
we're a short one today.
yeah, it was a little bit shorter than normal, but hey, this was a shorter episode, so there wasn't as much to cover. So, Heather, anything to talk about or plug for this week? I know you don't have a
Um,
YouTube channel, but
I do not, but yeah, come hang out at PCB on Overlord DVD's channel on Wednesday. I'll be a wrench. I'll be in the chat, and love to see you all there.
yeah, Pop Culture Breakdown this Wednesday. we're covering a very cool movie, 1953 Shane,
I'm
which
looking
is,
forward to watching that. I've never seen it before.
yeah, it's a really good movie. It's a Western from back in the 50s. If you're familiar with some of the Westerns from back in the day, you'll recognize some of the actors. So I'm looking forward to talking about it. We're really going to talk about that and talk about a couple other things that we have got coming up on Pop Culture Breakdown on Doomcock's channel. So join us there. Friday Night Frolics, I know you're a wrench there, and I'll be in the chat on Friday Night Frolics coming up. And then in a couple
Always
weeks,
fun.
we'll get to episode 5.
Yeah, in 2
With
weeks,
Band of
right?
Brothers. Yeah, in
2
2 weeks we'll do that, and then in like 3 weeks we will have again around the same time. We will be doing our 80s wrap up show with everybody doing their top 40 of the 1980s. Agent Pepsi One will have her top 40. Heather will have hers. Tony will have his, and then I'll have mine. So it should be a lot of fun.
Hey, Sigvaldison says he's never watched the series. Dude, you need to check it out, man. It's
Oh my
great.
goodness, Sig Balderson.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely
definitely.
watch it.
Definitely check out the series. I mean, it's amazing. It's a great watch. I mean, we're watching it again, and it's been out for what 20 some odd years, and it's still really good. I mean, it's still better than a lot of stuff I see today. I mean, so yeah, I would give it a shot. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So, hey, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who joined us live. If you didn't catch us live, hopefully you're catching on the replay. Leave us comments on what you have to say. If you have anything to add, we're all ears. We love learning more about history and learning more about these brave men and World War II. It's something that both of us love. That's why we love the show, and that's why I love talking about it. But I want to say thanks to SP4H, Sig Valdison, 2410 Dogface, Agent Pepsi One, Tara Starbringer. Thank you guys so much for being in the chat and for joining us on this episode.
Yeah, you guys are a great chat. You guys, you add so much to the discussion, and it's great, great having you here. It makes it so much more fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And to get your insights, having
Yes,
some of you served in the military, it's wonderful. Thank you so much for your service, and thank you for sharing some of your stories. It's fantastic. It's awesome. I love it. Like we said, we're not historians. We just love Band of Brothers, and we love history, and you know that's what we want to talk about and share, and that's what this is all about. Having fun, enjoying a good series, and learning something.
yeah,
Really cool stuff.
absolutely.
So, but anyway, that's our show for this week. I know it was a shorter stream, but thank you guys for being here. Please like and share, and subscribe if you haven't. And if anybody else watches Band of Brothers and likes Band of Brothers, share this stream out. I'm sure they would enjoy talking about it or reviewing an episode or two. So we'll see you in a couple weeks when we talk about episode 5. Everybody take care. Have a wonderful week.
Bye. Have a good evening.
See ya.